Okay, hello everyone. Hi, and welcome to our Downright Capable talk show. My name is Marla Marasco. I am with our co-host, Brian Herndon, and we have an amazing show for you today. So we do hope that you stay with us until the end. If you are watching this on the replay, please know that you can still comment, and we encourage you to share the show with others. We have a really exciting announcement that we wanted to share with all of you. If you haven't noticed, Brian and I are wearing our new Downright Capable t-shirts. Brian's posing. I got
you see yours? There you go.
Yeah, so we're excited because we collaborated with Sean McElwee from Born This Way and his t-shirt company, Sean Zay. And we had asked Sean to design for us two different shirts. One, again, that Brian and I are wearing, which is for the parent and or the caregiver. And then we have the one that the individual with Down syndrome would wear. Oops, I'm not good at this Vanna White thing.
No, you're doing great. You're doing great.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's the one that they will wear. So there's two different shirts. I'm excited about our collaboration because really here at Downright Capable, we are trying to spread awareness that individuals with Down syndrome are capable. And since Sean does have his own business, we felt that it was most appropriate to partner with him on this collaboration. So I will share with you the link. So we encourage you to head over to Sean's website today. We actually have free shipping that we're excited to share with you, and I will also share that code with you as well. But yeah, go over to his website. We hope that you'll support not only Downright Capable, but you will support Sean as well and help us spread awareness. The next thing I wanted to share with you today is that just the format of our show, just a little bit of housekeeping. The format of our show today is that we do have a really great presentation and we want to give the bulk of the time to our presenter. So we are going to let our presenter do a majority of the talking today. However, if you do have a comment, or not a comment, if you do have a question, leave it in the comment section. We'll leave about 5 or 10 minutes at the end of the show for Q&A. So Brian, I know you just showed our beautiful shirts, but you look great in it.
Thank you. You look great too.
Thank you.
I really like the blue one actually that your son has. I love that color. It's very nice.
Yeah, thank you. What do you have, gray? Is that the gray?
I have gray, and I got my son gray. I'm kind of wishing I had done the blue.
Yeah. I mean, so obviously
I'll have to get another one.
So introduce us to our dynamic guest today.
Absolutely. So I am very excited about this because Amy Allison, she's the Chief Operating Officer of the Kansas City Down Syndrome Guild. And she has tremendous knowledge and experience of working with people with Down syndrome. But on a personal note, I actually have known Amy for the better part of 10 years. We moved to Kansas City shortly after our son Nate was born. And he had heart surgery at Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City, Missouri. And the Kansas City Down Syndrome Guild and Amy was a large part of just making this happen. They were just a wonderful support for us as we went through that difficult time. And so many people gave us hope that everything was going to work out and work out well. And so I got to meet Amy through that. And so I'm super excited to have Amy join us on our show. Amy, welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do with the Down Syndrome Guild.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm very passionate about this topic and always excited to share with anybody who's willing to listen. And it's been a pleasure to serve your family. We were sad to lose you, Brian.
Yes.
I have been blessed to be at the Down Syndrome Guild since January of 2003. Prior to that, I worked 8 years cross-categorically for a community developmental disability organization and helped with start Medicaid case management there. I did direct care. So I've been in the trenches, driven the 15-passenger van, picked people up in the workshop, taken them to medical appointments, helped them balance their checkbooks. And I loved working with people with various diagnoses. But when the job became available at the Down Syndrome Guild, I really kind of surveyed the population of people I was working with. And I realized that people with Down syndrome had a ton of potential that was untapped. And I really felt like I could move the needle for them. And so I became Down syndrome centric and have never looked back. And I'm blessed to have thousands of friends with Down syndrome all over the world, work with families. We work with 45 school districts in both Catholic archdioceses here in the metro. We consult with other Down syndrome associations. We do trainings, across the country. We're very passionate here about changing the narrative for people with Down syndrome. We're very frustrated that less than 5% of our population is going to college.
Yeah.
With 250 post-secondary programs. And we're frustrated that less than 20% of our population is working in a meaningful way. They're underemployed or unemployed. And we recognize that schools have some limitations. There's only so much we can do to help in the schools. It falls to families. Families are the only constant. Schools will change, administrators will change, therapists will change, paras will change. The family is the only constant.
Yeah.
And this is why I developed the foster it's not only for educators, but also it starts at home.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
I was just to say, I love that you said that your desire was to just move the needle a little bit for people with Down syndrome. And I have to brag, I know you've done a lot of great things, but you truly have moved the needle, and not just a little bit. I feel like you've moved it a lot. You've really made a lot of inroads into creating awareness and creating opportunities and partnering with parents and families and schools and community groups to move that needle even further. So I appreciate all that you do, and I know Marla does, and thousands of others. So
thank you.
We're super grateful for the work that you do.
I'm blessed to have a calling. It's not a job for me. I'd probably do it for free, but don't tell my board.
It needs to be a calling, absolutely, yeah.
That's right. I usually start this presentation by sharing with parents or educators. This is like scrapbooking. You need to start where you are and move forward and forget about the 3 other kids you had and all the vacations you didn't take pictures of. Right. People tend to beat themselves up. Hopefully this presentation will give you some aha moments, some light bulb moments, but don't beat yourselves up. Just move forward. Hopefully we add tools to your tool belt today. You feel more empowered. And just even starting thinking about this is a huge step in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Tendency to overhelp and coddle and disable people with intellectual disabilities. And I say frequently, well-meaning adults are doing all the wrong things for all the right reasons. This comes at you with love. And if you're upset by anything I say or want a do-over, I can't help you with a do-over. I can just help you move forward. Absolutely. I know you had some questions specifically about, potential effects of para support.
So my son has he has an environmental para, and I know Marla, your son works with a paraprofessional as well, and many kids with Down syndrome do. Talk to us a little bit about that, Amy, as far as, we're talking about fostering independence, and we want that, but we also know that our kids are dependent at some level. So talk to us a little bit about just, para support in the classroom and just how that affects that independence, and how can we work with both worlds to create an independent person.
Right. Tends to be a default setting that we think a para, one-to-one para is going to be the best case scenario for a person with syndrome, and that concerns me a little bit. The whole goal of education is to launch somebody out into the world and they would get a job and contribute back to society.
Right.
There aren't a lot of jobs out there where somebody's going to stay by your side the entire time and be available. And what we've got now with this mantra of one-to-one para is the best thing ever is we graduate kids prompt, praise, and reward dependent. They literally are looking for the next, what do I do next? Who do I do it with? When do I do it? They literally don't know how to jumpstart their own learning, jumpstart their own work, stay on task. And this is very problematic if your vision is for your son or daughter to be employed as adults. And, the workforce is not ready for people with intellectual disabilities. We can all agree on that. We really have to make sure our folks are ready for the workforce. And the potential effects of para support can go both ways. They can be fantastic. I would always prefer a para that's no nonsense, authoritative, not a pushover, not mean, if you will, but is not taking anything off this kid with Down syndrome, is holding him to task and raising the bar. Paras, as we know, tend to have the least amount of education, but have the most exposure to your sons or daughters. And so we lay a large table for them to expect them to be able to modify the materials, work through behavior, do all the scheduling, and make sure their IEP goals are being worked on. It's unfair. Paras have all the responsibility and zero authority. Most of the time, they don't even get a seat at the IEP table. You have to implement everything that comes down the pike in an IEP.
I know. Yeah.
My heart really goes out to paras.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I think occasionally, we have Velcro paras who are, always right there at the quick and ready. And it's problematic and disabling because the person with Down syndrome may never even think to try to do something on their own. They may to what's next.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes, a para in that close proximity is going to be a barrier also to me to peers wanting to come and engage with me.
Right.
Barrier to the gen ed teacher engaging in my education. They can say, oh, that's your kid, and here's what we're doing today, and here's the lesson plan.
Right.
So I think people should be really conscientious about the use of paras, should be available to the Down syndrome, and kind of helicopter in, right ship, helicopter back out, and be available, but not always Johnny on the spot.
So talk to us a little bit, Amy, just with that para support, because I know sometimes in the classroom, I've been a classroom teacher, and it is easy to just say, hey, paraprofessional, you do the work. I'll take the other 24 kids.
Exactly. That was my question.
But really, the teacher should be in charge of all 25, and that paraprofessional is the support that fades in and out. Is that how it should be?
Of course. In an ideal world, every classroom would be co-taught. There'd be a gen ed teacher, a sped teacher, and a para who was available to all 25 kids, not just needed for one kid.
Right.
Unidentified kids that benefit from support. And we know every time we modify something for a person with Down syndrome, there's usually 4 to 10 other kids in the class that are going to benefit from that modification.
Absolutely. So how would that classroom teacher have a conversation either with the special education teacher who maybe supervises the paraprofessional, or even with the paraprofessional to say, hey, this is my classroom and I want to be the child's teacher, without sounding rude?
I don't think it would be rude. I think it would, the best measure of a paraprofessional is how far away you are from the kid you're assigned to. That's my personal mantra. Work yourself out of a job. You're only getting paid $8 an hour anyway.
Right.
Your job, the student's job, and the gen ed teacher's job. What we really need is principals who strongly embrace, planning time so that we can get together. If we meet just once a year annually to talk about this kid's support needs, we're sunk. And then if we only meet when there's problems, when we have to do a functional behavior analysis or a behavior intervention plan, we're also sunk. We need to be proactively meeting as a team to talk about how can we address this kid's needs. And in the process, when we address his needs, we probably pick up 3 or 4 other kids, coincidentally, who have the same needs. Every time we hear that, we modified it for this kid, but we also got this benefit from it.
Right.
If a gen ed teacher is proactive and says, I want to, I need you to hang back, a para should respect that. Sometimes parental expectations play into it. If you ask parents, do you want the para to hang back? That's not always the case. And that makes your jobs harder, in my opinion, when the kids get home from school. To somebody all day long, every day, helping them, and then they come home, they're looking at you for stuff they're quite capable, no pun intended, on the Downright Capable show.
Right.
They can do it on their own at home, but they're just used to getting help all the time.
Absolutely. Well, it goes to what you had mentioned, that, you have the least experienced person practically being the educator for our children. And that can't happen. It's not a win-win for anybody. That's not a good recipe. So, I mean, I think it's also incumbent upon parents that if you're starting to see stuff like that, you need to start asking questions, like what's happening in the classroom.
Sure. We also see with some paras that they are, not respecting I do it messages, or they are engaged in power struggles.
Yeah.
And I'm the authority here and you need to toe the line. Other kids are observing you, not follow my directions. You're not moving as fast as I want. The work you're doing doesn't look the way I think it should work. And non-compliance tends to be seen as a bad thing. There are a lot of times all of us are non-compliant, or we the way, not the way somebody else would do them. The way I make breakfast might look totally different from the way Brian makes breakfast. Is my way wrong? Is his way right? And we tend to die on the mountain. We have some paras that, it's got to be this way or the highway, and they're too rigid, just like sometimes your kids are too rigid. They will do things for a preferred person. Like dad's the only person that can put me on the bus. Mom cannot put me on the bus, or it would be a horrible day type of thing.
Right.
Well, it's also even understanding what non-compliance is. I mean, they automatically consider, because the child didn't obey the rule or the command or the task that was asked of them, that they're non-compliant. Did the child actually understand what you were asking them?
Sure. Yeah. Did they have the right tools? Did the directions make sense?
Exactly.
Probably the biggest offender is lack of processing time being allowed.
Absolutely.
So my computer up in front of me, and if I typed in a command, hit enter, typed in a command, hit enter, typed in a command, hit enter, what's going to happen to my computer?
Right.
Time is going to stall. I'll get the not responding. I get the black or blue screen of death. And more often than not, I'm going to have to reboot my computer. And then I'm kicking myself, right? The whole time, if I had just been patient, I would have got what I wanted out of this. If I had allowed for the processing time, I would have got what I wanted.
Right.
This is what we do all day, every day to people with Down syndrome. We do not allow for processing time. They're very quick intellectually and can understand you and process intellectually. Then they've got fine motor, gross motor deficits. So I'm slow to move to do what you say, get your math book out and turn to page 232. I heard that. I'm ready to do it, but I got to get the message from my brain to through my
hands to do the work,
to
to turn the
hands,
page.
do that, to turn the page. And you, 2 seconds in, you're like, aren't you going to follow through? And it's time for math. We talked about this, and good kids get their math books out. And do you see everybody else getting their math book out? And so we like overload. And really what we become is Charlie Brown's teacher. Wah, wah, wah. And they're done with us.
Absolutely. And it's
So the
frustrating.
processing time is critical.
Any of us would be done with that. If we had someone constantly telling us what to do next, you do tune them out and you get frustrated with it. And then if you have or don't have the communication skills, or even if you do have the communication skills to say I'm frustrated, you tend to be like, I don't like this anymore. And then it becomes a behavior.
Sure. And people, I hear all the time, teachers, that behavior came out of nowhere. And behavior does not come out of nowhere.
Right.
To avoid something, to obtain something, or for a sensory need. The behavior does not come out of nowhere. And when I do a behavioral observation in a school, more often than not, 90% of the time, a well-meaning adult caused a behavior to even be ratcheted up to an international incident.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So just kind of thinking about that idea, and so if I'm a paraprofessional or I'm a teacher and I'm in that situation and I want to help the kid, I'm a well-meaning person to help out. You talk a little bit sometimes about overthinking versus underthinking things. Talk to us a little bit about that, and what does that mean if I'm overthinking or underthinking working with a child with Down syndrome?
So we underthink it a lot of times when we don't realize we have to teach behavior. We know we have to teach writing and math, but we also have to teach behavior. And we can't teach proper behavior when somebody's in a crisis. This is not a teaching time. When somebody's in crisis, we just want to move through the crisis, and then we need to teach later when they're back, that's all resolved. And that's frustrating to me that too many people are punishing and trying to teach right in the middle of a crisis.
Right.
That's effective. And we need to change our thinking on that. I think also we totally underthink it when it comes to scheduling. If I do an observation in a school, it doesn't really matter the grade. I'll ask, the teachers invited me or the families invited me, principal, say it's a 5th grader with Down syndrome. Great. Can you send me Johnny's schedule? Can you also send me a schedule for a typical 5th grader in this building? All research tells us that transitions are hard for people with Down syndrome. Can we agree to that?
Yes.
It's tough stuff. Who has more transitions in their schedule every single time?
People with disabilities.
Always the people with intellectual disabilities. Always.
Yep.
And we're not talking like just 1 or 2 more. Sometimes it's double the amount of transitions.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why they have trouble with transitions.
Correct. And then we're also not just talking about from this room 10 feet down the hall to the next room. We're talking 100 yards across the building, past all my friends, my brother's classroom. I get to see the playground, the lunchroom where I can smell the food. And then everybody wonders why I do the famous Down syndrome flop and drop.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the dart.
A day. Yeah, 15 times a day, you move me through the building. And it's very rarely child-centered. It's always about resource and personnel allocation.
Absolutely.
Therapist is, we send him to the therapist. That's where the OT room is with all the toys and whatever, we send him over there. That's really frustrating to me. Then some schools tend to default, that's great, we'll just do self-contained and bring everything to this kid. That is not a model for somebody that can ever be successful in a job. There are times and years and maybe certain subject matter that's self-contained or one-to-one would be helpful, small group instruction. But the amount of movement that we require of these students in a day is ridiculous. And during those transitions, different people are talking to me or in charge of me or shuffling me back and forth. So if you went to work and you had 15 bosses in your day, you'd probably be sleeping out of the building.
Right.
Students really do. The para, the bus driver, the gen ed teacher, the special ed teacher, the resource room teacher, the librarian, the recess lady, the lunch lady, there's just
and sometimes you add even students into that mix, because sometimes students will say, you need to do this, you need to do that. I mean, so depending on the culture that the classroom has been set up, if they're in a regular classroom with a lot of students, you may have the para, the teacher, the special ed teacher, and students saying, do this, don't do that.
I affectionately refer to them as mother hens.
Yes.
Mother hens.
Yes.
And I appreciate that they're interested in their peer. There should not be an authoritative voice in their peers' education. They should be modeling, and certainly they should have the language to say, I don't like it if you blew in my face, or don't take my pen, or don't touch my lunch, or those types of things. But mother hens can really shut down independence. So if you have a strong para who's no nonsense, not Velcroed, stays back, but then you have mother hens fill in that space, we're kind of sunk again.
Right.
I think that's where the para is actually important, because if they're not in close proximity to the student with Down syndrome, but allows for that engagement and something is happening, don't take my pen, that's when they should come in and actually kind of say, how can we do this better? Can we respect each other? Can we work as a team? Because then it's kind of like, if she's right there or he's right there, do. The individual with Down syndrome is like, oh my goodness, like, really? Everybody back off of me.
Right.
We don't have very many people with Down syndrome who have good problem solving skills, coping strategies. And I would like that student in your scenario, Marla, to feel a little bit of pain and to try and work it out with the peer sitting next to him before the para comes over.
I would love for them, my child, to have learned problem solving.
Right.
Yes.
Because they don't know how to do it. They just look to the para to say, like, are you going to handle this? And that is the one thing that, to your point, is the close proximity. They don't have the problem solving skills to say, to verbalize, hey, can we work together? Oh, I'm sorry.
And that, Marla, to your point, it kind of comes back to that thing that Amy was talking about with, we need to teach that skill rather than in the midst reprimand that deficit to teach the skill. And so if we're not teaching the skill in a time when their affective filter is low and they're open to teaching, but when your affective filter is high and you're frustrated and you're in fight or flight, I'm not going to learn what you want to teach.
None of us learn that way.
No.
None of us are open to learning when we're in fight or flight.
No, not at all. Not at all. So you had talked about the transition piece, and I don't know that this is necessarily part of your presentation on fostering independence, but I think it kind of fits. So even transition in the classroom, like I think about some children who have a behavior intervention plan or improvement plan, and part of that is that they get a break and they get to choose their break. So how does that fostering independence of, okay, I'm going to listen to the teacher, they're going to do their lesson, and I'm going to go now take a break and draw on a paper or listen to earphones or play on my iPad for a few minutes, and then I'm going to come back and do the work. So I've added a transition in there to this child's day that the other kids don't have. You see what I'm saying? So how does that kind of work with what
Well,
you're
it can be
talking about?
confusing. And then if you think like an employer, my boss does not give me multiple breaks during the day. I get a 30-minute lunch, or I could take 15 minutes here, or what have you. We have kids with Down syndrome who work 5 minutes, get a 5-minute break, work 10 minutes, get a 5-minute break. They're getting multiple breaks during the day. And sometimes they're not even looking for it. We've just programmed that in. And psychological research, I have a psychology degree, says that intermittent reinforcement is the best way to shape behavior. But we have a constant reinforcement with Down syndrome. They feed off of it, whether it's positive or negative. It doesn't work for them. If you have a situation like you described, Brian, what I would like to do is, see if the kid's even looking for the break. Don't say, you need your math. Do you need your break? Say, okay, we're done with math. Let's go to social studies. And if he doesn't look for the break, then move along.
Right.
And build his tolerance to doing multiple activities in a row. And
Right.
then offer the break every day at the same time. Make it intermittent. We have so many kids in schools right now with Down syndrome who are working for rewards that they don't know the intrinsic value of doing work put in front of them.
Right.
Took classes that meant nothing to us, that were way over our head, that we would never choose a profession in. But we did them because we learned tolerance and different, maybe it opened different pathways in our brain, and we met different people who had different interests or what have you. But we all have to do non-preferred things, and we all have to push through tasks that are uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
We don't all get a break or praise every time we do something we're supposed to do.
Right.
It flops and drops on the floor. We bribe him to get up. When he gets up, we praise him for getting up.
Yep.
Or worst case scenario, we call a highly preferred person to get him off the floor. And then we've completely taught him to throw himself on the floor to get his highly preferred person to show up every time.
Right.
What you could do is, if Brian's the highly preferred person, is you call Brian, but Brian takes the other 24 kids down the hallway and says, see ya, we're going down to gym.
Mm-hmm.
Then he has to feel the effects of, oh, wait, I'm on the floor and my favorite person just took everybody over here.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. So talk to us a little bit. I'm just thinking about, supporting versus punishing. I know that's not something we kind of thought about ahead of time, but so, when we're thinking of that learned or the transitions, when we're thinking of teaching kids, the behaviors we want them to model or to do, talk to us a little bit about that support versus punish and how that kind of fits into this fostering independence.
So supporting is forward thinking, and it's not stuck in the moment. And we're developing a rap sheet about this kid. And we're also not anticipating that he's going to have this behavior every day or in every same situation or multiple times a day. That's part of overthinking. Is if somebody with an intellectual disability has behavior, we just go into panic mode. They're going to do it every day, all day. And why did they do it? And we can't kind of move past it to say, okay, they did that. What can we do to help them not do that again? And we get really emotional about it. I love David Stein's book about teaching children with Down syndrome behavior. You should get it on the show at some point.
Yeah.
He talks about responding instead of reacting. Somebody cuts me off on the freeway. It's not very nice. I could respond to them by, a reaction, me speaking, cutting them off, road rage, and I end up dead on the side of the road.
Right.
It can get ratcheted up very quickly. A response would be, well, you must be in a big hurry, or that guy's a jerk, and I just move on with my day.
Right.
So very different ways that we react to these behaviors. And when you're in the moment, if you're highly emotional, people with Down syndrome feed off of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
IQs are compromised, but their emotional quotient is off the charts.
Yeah.
It works for and against them. It works for them in the sense that they're very empathic. They know who's having a bad day. When they give a hug, they're in the moment, and if you feel a hug from a person with Down syndrome, it's real.
Absolutely.
Fake hugs there. And they can read the emotions in a room pretty quickly. They know if you're anxious about being around them or working with them. They know if you're excited or happy. Conversely, they can use that emotional quotient to play people like fiddles.
Absolutely.
They're very manipulative at times and kind of, do a woe is me and play the Down syndrome card and somebody come do it for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Problematic.
Yeah.
And the behavior that we see, if we're continually punishing and we're continually only focusing on the behavior instead of the teaching and the supporting, we're sunk. Even if we eradicate one behavior, there's another one coming behind it and another one behind it.
Right. Yeah. That's good advice. Good thinking.
And the supporting goes back to that processing time, number one, first and foremost. And then figuring out, I've got a slide somewhere in my deck. Was this a skill issue or a will issue?
Yeah.
If the kid is in behavior or non-compliant or not producing a task that you think they're capable of, as a team or as a family, you need to decide, was that a skill issue? Why he didn't make it down the hallway and threw himself on the floor? Well, no, he's walked down the hallway 500 times before. He knows how to walk down the hallway. He knows where he's got the visual strategy or the lanyard that shows him where he's going. He's even got the footprints on the floor. This is not a skill issue. This is a will issue.
Right.
The way you react is very different. if it's a skill issue, we have to pre-teach, and we have to teach in multiple settings and realize there might not be generalization. If it's a will issue, that comes down to where we have to support in advance and teach coping strategies and make sure that we build a tolerance to non-preferred activities.
Yeah, that's really good. So thinking again about, you've talked about, thinking as an employer and looking toward that possibility. You in your slides, you talk about successful supervising of adults, and Marla and I, you have an almost teenager. I have one that's still a few years away, but I know we have viewers who have adult children or almost adult children. What does that look like as far as being successful and helping them find success in the world that they live in?
In my opinion, successful supervising adults, don't feel sorry for this individual. They expect that they will, rise to the occasion and continue to raise the bar. They have a presumption of competence. They will wait until the person with Down syndrome indicates, I need help. They will back off. There's a phrase that's used regularly in the adult service world called dignity and risk. We need to start using it with parents of 3-year-olds as well. There is dignity and risk. We all moved out of our parents' homes and we did dumb stuff.
Yep.
Overdrew our bank account, and maybe we signed up for a credit card with 31% interest. In my case, the first house we bought, we got a 3-year adjustable rate mortgage and thought this is great. But at the end of the 3 years, our mortgage payment went up $600 a month. Not so great. So we all make mistakes and we learn from our mistakes. We tend to protect people with disabilities from, feeling a little bit of pain from their mistakes. We don't want them to be unsuccessful. We just checked in 30 adults the other night for an activity here, and we're using a new check-in system. It's on the iPad. And you have to find your name. You start typing in. So I would type in AMY. It will pull your name up, or anybody with those names, the letters in their name. And then you have to enter an emergency phone number. Mm-hmm. Every single parent grabbed for the iPad, and we said, nope, we're going to work with your adult to do it. Like they were just on default settings. Some of these people are 30, some are 40. And I love these parents. I've known them for 16 years, but it's like, this does not involve you. We need to teach your son or daughter to be able to check in at our events and be independent.
Absolutely.
Of those 30 adults that walked in, several of their parents took their coats off and went and hung them up. My staff's not doing that. If drop their coat on the floor, and I'll say, why would you do that? Go hang your coat up. And I walk away from them, and they business and they pick up their coat and hang it up.
Right.
Their parents don't even allow them to think about it. They just take the coat off and go hang it up.
Sure.
And that goes back to, it's well-meaning, they just want the transition in to be successful.
Yeah.
The first time they tried to type in on the iPad, it was pretty slow, but next they'll be faster, and next time they'll be faster, and eventually they'll, be proficient at it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm adult, and I love what you're saying, because that's I have a 10-year-old son. Marla, your son's 12. That's applicable to my son and Marla's son and younger kids, like you said, 3-year-olds that we need to let them try and maybe fail. Mm-hmm. Even though as a parent, it's really hard for me to do that. I don't want my kid to fail. Nobody does, but that's so important. I'm glad you said that, Amy.
Yeah, when you feel a little pain, you learn from it, and you try and you do better next time. And individuals with Down syndrome need multiple exposures in multiple settings to pick up a skill and understand and generalize that this is the expectation everywhere I go.
Yeah, absolutely.
At home, he always hangs my coat up, but at DSG, they turn around and walk away from me. And if a mother hen hangs my coat up. So you can see why it would be confusing and why they would think, hey, DSG, hang my coat up. What are you doing? You're being lazy.
Right. Yeah. So I'm an adult. I'm a kid who has Down syndrome, and I'm working in the classroom or in a job or wherever. It's really easy to get off task, and maybe I had a thought in my mind and I'm going with that, or maybe I have too many people telling me what to do. How do you help people stay on task and still foster that independence? Because those almost seem like they might be in opposition to each other, but I know they're not. So talk to us about that.
Yes, they seem like they're mutually exclusive, but they don't have to be. I go into some classrooms and I'm on sensory overload, as an adult, and I'm not sure how kids with Down syndrome stay in their seat. We definitely have impulse control issues, and we have working memory issues. So if you gave me a 5-step, request or command, I get stuck on the first 2, or I get stuck on the last 2, and I miss the whole middle portion.
Mm-hmm.
That some predictability in scheduling will help. Visual strategies will always help. Allowing, understanding why transitions are even happening, telling me why this is going on in the classroom or why I need to leave and go do speech. I think the fewer verbal prompts, the better. When somebody is struggling with, when they're off task, we tend to over verbalize and we shut down even more.
Right.
If they're off task, here at the Down Syndrome Guild, we do fun social stuff. So I don't have the, demands of a classroom. Let's be fair.
Right.
If they're off task here, sitting outside and visiting and not participating in whatever activity we've prepared for them, it's just a quick conversation. Your friends are in there. We're waiting for you, and we walk away. We don't stay and engage, and we don't, do the eye to eye, and we're not bribing you to come get involved in this activity. And when you do get up and come get involved, we're not praising you for coming in.
Mm-hmm.
This is part of life. The expectation is you're here, you should be in there with your friends doing the event.
Right.
So that goes back to where we overthink it, where we've got to correct for this, we've got to problem solve for it. Majority of the time, I would say kids are off task because of sensory overload and or not having materials that make sense to me. They haven't been modified. I don't know why this work is important to me. A worksheet is probably the last thing I would ever put in front of somebody with Down syndrome, but it's default setting for schools. Can I do a worksheet inside a sheet protector and have an expo marker, because I'm crazy about expo markers, and that's easier for me to write with an expo marker.
Right.
You add some of the medical issues into it, I think that leads to off-task behavior as well, my low tone. So sitting up in this chair is hard, I'm starting to fade and slide down under the table, and you think I'm being non-compliant. It's really a medical issue. I need a structured seat. I need a cube chair or some, a slant board. So my work is actually up where I can see it. I can't tell you how many kids with Down syndrome are like hanging over their work, and my neck hurts when I just watch them.
Great.
There are simple things that we could do in schools to reduce that off-task behavior. It would, environmental consultation, OT consult, and making sure that the work makes sense and is not too overwhelming.
Yeah, that's good. You also talk in your presentation just about support, the role of support professionals. How is that different than maybe a paraprofessional? Are you thinking more adult support professionals? Talk to us about that and how that support professional helps to foster that independence for kids with or people with Down syndrome.
I started using that phrase because some schools call them paras, some call them
Okay.
aides, call them instructional assistants. So when I say support professional, it's all encompassing. Could
Okay.
be an ed teacher, could be the sped teacher, could be the paraprofessional.
Okay.
On the slide that your guests can't see, there's, 3 phases. We have the Velcro assistant, somebody who's always right there, Johnny on the spot, to probably too close proximity for this person to ever successfully be employed, problem solves for them, engages at a very high level. And then the stage down would be a helicopter assistant. So they're available, they kind of swoop in, right the ship, swoop back out, and make sure that the materials and the tools are there, but the kid is responsible for his own learning and engaging with his peers to the best of his ability. And then the last level would be a bridge builder. The support, whoever the adults are supporting this child would build a bridge between them and the curriculum, them and their peers, them and the future, and, potentially being in the workforce.
Right.
And if we take, most school days are like 7 hours and 40 minutes. It varies across the country, but
Sure.
ask teams to do data collection. Where are you during the day? And, more than not, they're way up here at the Velcro level. They don't get enough to do it, and they're teaching learned helplessness at that level every time. The more support we provide, the less independence you will see. And we do it for our convenience, for our time constraints, and we have to help these kids at all costs.
Absolutely. And I saw that in your slide somewhere, just that idea, and it almost seems counterintuitive, but I know it to be true, that if I give so much more support, the success seems to go down. But as I fade that support, it's almost like that success goes up.
And it's scary to fade the support. I'm no lies. It is very scary, and the behavior gets worse before it gets better, and the kid will make a lot of mistakes. But right now, we're just managing behavior all day long, and we're most of it. We're not really teaching. We don't have time to teach because we're moving the kids around the building so much, and we're managing behavior all day long, and we have to be engaged at such a high level.
Yeah.
And it's not necessary in some cases.
So I want to come back to that, how to fade support, but let's go. You mentioned something about just learned helplessness, you know, and, you know, we want our kids to be independent. We want adults to be independent. That's the goal. But sometimes a lot of these supports, like we talked about before, you've got the swivel head, like what's next? What's next? You know, I have learned to be so dependent upon the people, you know, Charlie Brown's teacher giving me instructions. How do we avoid that so that we don't have what I used to call a swivel head, you know, how do we avoid that?
I encourage families, teachers, whatever, just start small. It's not an easy thing. And if you off entirely, your kid will probably suffer completely, you know, and we'll see behaviors and maybe some safety issues. So something as simple as when you see the swivel head, a simple phrase, you know what you're supposed to do. I'll be back to check on you. And you just walk away. So not consistently there to answer or feeling like you have to, you know, support the person. I had a great librarian one time who said, what comes next to a student with Down syndrome who's having a lot of behaviors in the library. And, you know, we made a visual schedule for him, and then he was always looking, and she's like, what comes next? And she walked away from him, and he learned to look at his schedule instead of looking at the teacher or looking. She had a lot she had to manage, and she didn't want to have to, he was constantly looking for what comes next, what's comes next. And she's like, what comes next? We gave him a tool. He could figure it out on his own. There are tools that we can employ to help people understand what comes next. And if we build in enough predictability, they don't need the constant, you know, what comes next, what comes next. If we slowly dial ourselves out of the equation, or what do you think comes next? Or you jumpstart, I'll do the first one with you, and then I'm going to go over here and help somebody else, so that they know you're not staying permanently. You're just going to jumpstart, and then you're leaving.
Well, and that just seems to fit really, really well with the idea of fading that support as well, because, you know, we do want to support kids, you know, with disabilities, you know, and we want to support all kids really, you know, but at some point they need to do the work themselves. They need to show they can do it. They need to get from point A to point B on their own. And is there anything else you can offer to, you know, that would go with, you know, just how to fade that support for people with disabilities, the people that help them?
We encourage teams, because there's so many transitions in a building during the day, to start fading that way. There's a difference between somebody walking right next to me from point A to point B and somebody shadowing me. I come to the door and I say, Marla's down there, go see Marla, you know, and I'm walking on my own down that hallway. And then Marla picks me up at that corner and says, Brian's down there, and see Brian. So I have a purpose. I know where I'm going. I'm observed between point A and point B, but I don't have somebody holding my hand or walking right next to me. I have to be responsible for myself. And the tendency is to say, but there's an exit door over here and there's one here and he might run out. Well, he might not run out too. We don't know. If you're smart school, a smart team, you already have an emergency response plan in place, because when
that happens,
you need to know that, okay, we can't just decide that he can never walk down the hallway because he might do something. Likewise, we've had assemblies, you know, kids with Down syndrome don't do well in large settings, loud noises, unpredictable, lots of kids, movement, sensory overload. And we've had schools say, you know, she just can't be in an assembly because she can't keep it together. How do I learn to be in an assembly unless I'm allowed to go to an assembly? The family is also calling DSG saying, as a family, we totally want to go to these baseball games. We love the Royals, but she can't be at the stadium. How do we help her be at the stadium? Well, that starts with her learning how to be at the assembly. So this is closely tied together.
Absolutely.
Figure out, okay, what are you doing now? Well, she comes in first. Well, that's a really long wait, you know, for 400 other kids to come in and sit down behind her and to get the puppet show to finally get started. So bring her in first? Well, we could bring her in last. Well, even if the kids are all amazing, 400 kids sitting crisscross applesauce, there's noise, right?
There is, yes.
Somewhere, and you're 401 out of 401 people.
Right.
So let's not do that either. How about we bring her in the middle and slowly let the noise bubble up around her and classes kind of come in around her? And how about we put a chair by the door and we tell her, if it's too noisy for you here, you can go to the back of the gym and sit on the chair, the assembly. And maybe she's willing to sit with her peers some of the time and then gets overwhelmed. She has an exit strategy, a coping strategy. She can go sit on that chair. And then if she's still running out because it's too loud, maybe behind the chair we hang headphones. So they'd have headphones. And maybe she,
cancel out some of the sound.
When she walks into the assembly, sits with her friends with the headphones on sometimes.
Right.
The tendency would be to praise her a ton for doing that. We gave her tools and she's used tools.
Right.
And to not make it such a big deal.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear me because I think my internet is a little slow. So hopefully you get this question. But I guess my question really is, does that fading of the power support have to be written in the IEP? Or is that just something that a parent can go in and say, hey, look, I want to start seeing what this looks like for Sally or Sam? I mean, does it have to be written in?
I think it would depend on the level of trust you have with your team.
Yeah.
If you trust your team, I don't think it needs to be written in there. You could put it in parental concerns that your goal is, our vision and goal is for him to work in the community and he will not have one-to-one assistance on the job. And we'd like to fade support. And even if that's 5 minutes a day, that's something you guys can celebrate at the IEP table. And if just thinking about it, in the 7 hour and 40-minute day, could you do some data collection? Where are you spending all your time with my kid? Are we Velcro? Are we helicopter? How do we come down from this Velcro default setting?
Right. So what do you say to the family who maybe is experiencing their child engaging in some behaviors and the team feels like they need to come in, like they're abusing, the child is abusing the freedom, if you will, and the team feels like we need to surround him. I mean, for lack of a better term, to give more support because he has run, he has hit, he has cleared the table, or and he's showing that the independence that you're giving me, I'm not going to use it appropriately.
Sure. Could be the student's not ready for it, or it was introduced pretty dramatically, or support was pulled back. I would say that I would talk with the team, and if he's starting to lose integrity with his peers and there's no longer any educational benefit, if it's just disastrous in the gen ed setting, is the placement working? Is he, yes, this doesn't work for me? Or about the fact that we haven't modified the materials enough. We don't have appropriate seating for him. Is it go to his hearing deficit and he'd do great with an auditory trainer, but otherwise can't filter out the white noise. And so he literally can't focus.
Right.
And is there a medical issue? Is there something going on that's, our folks are not good self-reporters. Right. And we misascribe motives all the time. We had a young man here with Down syndrome. The middle school called and said, he's exploring his body and his hands are in his pants all the time. I thought, well, puberty, good times. And, you can't do that. You're going to lose friends. It's not appropriate. He doesn't have the filter to wait until he's home in his bedroom, what have you.
Right.
And so we put him in jeans and a belt and slowed down his access. And we did all this puberty training. And it was like a week later and his mom called me and she said, I had to go pick him up. He's urinating blood at school. He had a raging UTI, tract infection, but we decided this was a sexual behavior and it was going to be maladaptive and we had to address it that way.
But he was bothered because he was in pain.
Yeah, that was on us.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we don't consider, is this a medical issue? Is it a stamina issue? Is it the skill issue, the will issue? But a kid that's in crisis and, is getting no educational benefit, the team needs to be meeting and needs to talk about. If you surround him in the gen ed setting, he's not getting any general education anyway. So What does that placement look like? And I'd love for parents to have really high level of trust with their team to say, okay, he's in crisis today and this gen ed's not going to work for him, even though it says 70% of his day is in gen ed. I need him to get through today and not lose his friends or have kids be scared of him and actually get some educational benefit. I trust you to move him out, knowing that your goal is always to get him back in when it's appropriate.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
good point.
So, Marla, do you have anything else? I know we're getting close to time, and
I do actually. We have about 12 minutes left, but I do want to ask this one question, Amy, because I saw it on your notes, and I mean, I'm kind of interested to hear what the answer is because I'm not 100% sure I know what the answer is. I think I do, but I don't want to assume. You have backward chaining.
Hmm?
Can you tell a little bit about that?
If there are tasks in the day, maybe shoe tying, which is not really academic benefit, but that's the best example I can come up with right now on the spot. So shoe tying is 82 steps or 23 steps, however many steps it is. Which part of those steps can the student do independently? Can he do 1, 3, 7, and 9? And so we let him do 1, and then we do 2, and then we let him do 3, and then we do 4, 5, 6, and then we have him do 7. You know, you can see how long shoe tying is going to take. So
Right.
it's easy to just tie the shoes and send the kid off, or to always buy him Velcro shoes, basically.
that's what we do. We buy Velcro.
Yeah. So backwards chaining is like a task analysis. You take a look at all the steps and whatever the task is. Where does it break down for the kid? Which functions can he do on his own? And then how do we build his stamina or teach him the skills to do every single step in that process?
Mm-hmm.
See all the time people on Facebook, you know, my kid won't let me brush his teeth every night. Why can't he just brush his teeth every night? You know, I'm like, well, teeth brushing is 30 steps. And do you have a visual on your thing? And it's going to take longer than you want. And maybe he's not going to get as clean as you want. But if you're going to hand him every day, he'll let you do that, or he'll fight you every day, one of two.
Right.
How do we teach him to tolerate teeth brushing? Do we tie in, you know, you brush your teeth for one song and it's your favorite song. I can tolerate that, you know, or do we, he just needs help getting the toothpaste on and then he can go to town. But he needs help with the spitting because he'll swallow it. And that's, we don't want him to swallow it.
Right.
It's really, backwards chaining is about looking at the task, analyzing it, breaking it down, figuring out where the person actually needs help versus doing it for them.
Yeah. And that really just, I think that applies to everything. Like if you're experiencing behaviors in school, or if you're on the job and there's a challenge or a difficulty, well, let's look at that task, let's break it down, and let's start with what you can do and give you that control, and we'll support you where you can't. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I have a perfect example of that. We have a gentleman here in Kansas City who delivers mail at a law firm, and he was misdelivering some mail.
Mm-hmm.
Employees were taking the mail to the correct people. And then the employer said, you know, we're not sure if this is going to work out. And I said, well, have you told him he's misdelivering the mail? No. I said, well, he thinks he's got 100% accuracy. You have to tell him he misdelivered the mail.
Right.
Why didn't we think of that? And I said, I don't know. You really need to, you know, everybody needs to take their misdelivered mail probably to his supervisor so he doesn't have 10 people coming over to him interrupting his workday. But that's the protocol. I said, everybody who gets misdelivered mail takes it to his supervisor, and a supervisor says, hey, try these again. These were misdelivered.
Yeah.
And not like a lecture or you did bad, or it's just, you know, as a matter of fact, my boss would come and say, hey, you need to take another shot at this.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So simple things like that, where we're too afraid to say you made a mistake and here's how you could correct it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Marla, do we have any questions from any of our audience members? Or
We do. I'm not 100% sure I understand the question. So I'm actually just going to read it and we'll go from there. The question is, I think it's, I can't say the name, Vicus. The question is, it's many times difficult to judge the right modification was provided, or was it just namesake?
So the right modification maybe to make the academic materials make sense?
It sounds like that, yeah.
Just like a placeholder? Yeah. There's not enough expertise in schools on how to modify materials. And then for some reason, it seems like every teacher, every grade, every subject is the first person to ever modify the curriculum, which can't be true. But schools are not good about housing modified materials in one location. So I encourage every school district I go in, make a Google Docs, make a Wiki Docs, file cabinet, I don't care where it is, but the next fourth grade teacher who has a kid with Down syndrome shouldn't have to design social studies if there have been other kids with Down syndrome or autism before, and the fourth grade teacher has modified all the curriculum. Doesn't mean that the way it was modified by another teacher will work for this kid, but at least you got a jumping off point. We have so many teachers that are online, teachers pay teachers and killing themselves to make modified materials. We need a better resource coalition. I think Nicole Eridix, who was on your show, she created a live binder site, which I'm excited to watch stuff.
We have to kind of share that because I saw that too. So we'll share that with our audience. I think it's called Live Binder too. So actually, I do have a question for you too, Amy. I don't want to say are we allowed? Is it okay for us as parents to put in the IEP that we, from a professional development, because that kind of goes to what you just said about, everybody starts the whole process all over again. And is it right? Is it wrong? I mean, can we put in the IEP that we would like them to attend certain educational webinars or presentations or conferences specific for Down syndrome?
You can request professional development in your IP for sure. I don't think you can dictate which one they go to. Like I want them to go to the National Down Syndrome Congress Convention, or I want them to go see Julie Costin, on inclusion. I think overall, you can say, based on our students' unique needs, we think some Down syndrome centric training would be helpful. In general, you can't say they need to go to this training. You can make them aware of training opportunities, and you can write in that you think they would benefit from professional education, but you can't dictate which ones. And feel free, you've done a bunch of IEPs if you have different philosophy.
No, that's exactly right. Having been on the inside and now, and I've been on the inside as a parent and as an educator, we can suggest, and ask for professional development, but that really is a school issue as to which they go to and how that's provided. So unfortunately, I mean, we can say, let's go to the Kansas City Down Syndrome Guild. They have this great training. Yeah, but we're going to do a local thing. Okay. At least you're getting something,
Sure.
So, yeah.
Well, I don't see any more questions. I'm going to post the link for Sean's website where our t-shirts are. If you have any questions, just we have about 5 more minutes. So if you have any questions, make sure to put them in our comment section. So we have Amy for another about 5 more minutes. If you guys have anything, we can ask her. And also, if you do, are you watching this on the replay? Just leave your questions. We can circle back with Amy after the fact, because I know some people, we get a lot of people who actually watch this on our replay. So
Absolutely.
Amy, as long as you're still available to us for any questions after the fact, that would be great.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Well, and we want to thank you as we're kind of wrapping up the show. We want to thank you, Amy, for your time with us. And so we want to give you a Downright Capable t-shirt. And
Yay!
So we will make sure we get that sent to you. I believe Marla just put up, if you are interested in getting a shirt, she put up the free shipping code on the comments there. And so just click on the link and use that free shipping code and it will come right to you. They really are good shirts. They have a great message and just in time for World Down Syndrome Day.
Well, that's the other thing I just wanted to share with everybody, that if you do go and purchase a shirt, first of all, we all thank you. We encourage you to post that on social media. And I have the hashtag up there, Downright Capable T-shirt. You could be a part of our social media campaign to spread awareness to society, to show that our kids are capable. And so, again, make sure you just put hashtag Downright Capable T-shirt in your post, and you could be a part of our social media campaign.
Well, and they're not just capable; they're downright capable.
They're downright. And then, Brian, do you want to share with everybody our next when our next show is?
Yeah, our next show is going to be March. You would ask me that. Let me bring up my calendar. March, did we say March 14th?
It's March 14th.
March 14th at 11 o'clock, sorry. And we are going to talk about what are we talking about, Marla? We talked about it yesterday. We're going to talk about, inclusion in the community and just being part of the community and resources and supports that are available to you in your area.
Yeah, I think the World Down Syndrome Day theme is leaving no one behind in education.
Yep.
And Brian and I have decided to make our own theme be leave no one behind in the community and what that looks like. So that again will be March 14th here on our Facebook talk show, 12 p.m. East EST, 11 a.m. CST.
Central. Yep.
And so, yeah, thank you again, Amy, for being here, and for everyone that was a part of the show today and anybody who's watching on the replay. Again, if you do have any questions, please make sure to just leave them, and we will circle back around with Amy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was a good show.
Amy, it was great to see you again, and
Good to see you too.
I know we'll be in touch.
Oh, actually, I do have one really good question. I want to bring this real quick. Kimberly asked, what do you feel is a good turnover for an educational assistant to be assigned to our students if they need one?
Oh, good question. I imagine you mean like during the day, should just one person be assigned, or year over year, should they be with the same person?
I'm thinking she's probably talking year over year, the turnover for an educational assistant. So
Sure.
Is it keep the same one, I guess?
If you have somebody that's rock solid and no nonsense, and your kid's progressing and they believe in fostering independence, I'm good with it. I do get a little hesitant on, rigidity and only learning one personality. When they go, of course, these individuals will have to learn multiple personalities. But if you have a rock solid relationship and the para or the instructional assistant is providing the appropriate level of support, modifying materials, working on goals, I'm fine with it. I just don't like when it's 6 years in a row, 7 years in a row. If you've got learned helpless, then we kind of run into an issue at that point.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, everyone.
Right.
Well, then, thank you so much, Amy, for being here. We'll connect with you on the team.
Thank you, Amy.
You're almost over.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. And
Thank you.
we'll see everybody in March.
All right.
Take
Sounds
care.
good. Thank you, Amy. Good to see you.
Bye.
Goodbye, Marla.
Bye-bye.